Well, Nigeria2015 here in the studios, China's television, looking at the elections for tomorrow. 36 states in the country, but 29 going for the governorship elections, with 10 having their incumbents seeking re-election into the offices. Now, we're talking with Professor Oshita in our Abuja studios via Skype. We were on the course asking if truly we were ripe enough to look into electronic voting. That was a question mark we posed before we went on that break. Professor Oshita, I see you still very much there with us. Can you let us have your view on that?
Okay, thank you. I believe that we need to perfect the card reader usage before we begin to talk of full-fledged electronic voting capacity. Because what we have found out is that the card reader has really helped, to put the elections on a note of credibility, because the issue of jumbo votes, manipulations, is no longer the case. So I believe that we should not run into, just move fast into electronic voting. Let us organize lessons learned event, which INEC probably will coordinate. I know civil societies will also do their own reports so that we can perfect the card reader technology to the point where there will be less failure, the rate of failure will be reduced, and also people could do accreditation and also vote at the point of accreditation. What we observed in the last election was that a number of people who did accreditation for different reasons could not return to do the actual voting. And that is not good enough for our electoral process. So if you see, they talk about the number of registered voters, the number of accredited voters, and those who actually voted, you see that such gaps make for less and less votes. Because even those who are accredited, not all of them could vote because they had to go, wait some time, and then come back to vote.
But so, if you let me come in here, interestingly, there's been some response in the studio to your point of view in terms of us not being ripe or us having to perfect the card reader first. But the question will be, when do you think, in your estimation, when would you say that we will be ripe for e-voting? Can you put a time frame to it?
Basically, this is work in progress, you must agree. Unless you get the initial steps right, if you take a leap that is, too expansive, a lot of things might be lost in the middle. So we should take it systematically, perfect one stage as a basis for leveraging, to the next stage. So I don't think that we have done enough. So I will take it that after these elections, before the next elections of the next regime, we need to, do a lot of work to convince ourselves if we will be ready for e-voting during that next election of the next regime.
Well, Professor is not exactly putting a time frame to this thing. I was hoping you would say maybe in the next 4 years, or we'll practice with the governorship elections that we still have to do, say in 2016, 2017. But gentlemen, you feel that we are ripe enough for this thing, and you're estimating that the next 4 years is good enough for us to move ahead?
In fact, last 2 years, 2011, we ought to have started.
Electronic voting?
Yes. You see, this gradualist approach to development has become anachronistic. You don't make progress in a world that is now age set. When you want to, many children today don't crawl. They just start walking. And that is the essence of some of these facilities that leverage them. You put the child, he moves around in that contrivance, and the muscles of the legs are strengthened. The next thing you see him walking towards the television. You don't wait to crawl and do all this. Time is so much in a flurry, and you don't have the time for eternity to enjoy whatever technology can provide. I have a vision of a situation where we can vote without having to make public holiday. You just get up, you go and put their card like in an ATM something, and if you want to fraudulently come back, the system will reject you. What it takes now is for us to say, the law is as it is now. The Electoral Act is specifically clear that electronic voting is not allowed. Remove that clause and escalate the electoral process.
But you saw the trouble we nearly got into when we introduced this.
Because
some people were saying it's part of the voting process. It's a trouble. In fact, it cannot work.
Okay.
You see, I tell you something. How do you learn how to drive well if you don't hit the roads?
Yes.
You see, hands-on.
But you must practice.
I understand. Hands-on learning is the best and the most cost-effective way to go about it. I agree with what Professor said. It has to be a process. While we're doing it hands-on, lessons learned, we're taking notes. And I tell you, if we do it on and on and on, we're going to hit a learning curve where we'll make less mistakes. If you picked a car off the showroom right now, for the next 3 or 4 days, you and the car are bound to argue because you're not going to understand him and he's not going to understand you, but it's going to pan out as you continue with the vehicle. Now, I want to tell you something about the E-age. Within the E-age is more given to the now time. The E-age has actually made the future now and the past now. So what you can actually do in the now within the E-age writes what the past becomes and actually shapes what the future will be like. Now with these card readers, I'm telling you there is nothing like an idea whose time has come. You cannot just obviate it. It's the way to go. The card readers will get better. But then the fact that we have tried it once doesn't mean we jump to the end.
But some people are talking about power, infrastructure. Certain things must be in place for us to be able to do this.
I tell you something, necessity is the mother of invention. Let me explain that. Sometime back in life, I had to learn how to ride a bike. And if I had wanted to wait until I had the confidence to go on a two-wheel device without falling, I wouldn't have done it. So someone had to actually ensure that while I was doing it hands-on, he was holding on to the bike, and that was my uncle. But one day, he held on to the bike, and I started off, and then he left it. I went for like 100 or 200 meters, and when I looked back and he wasn't there, I fell down. Because it was in me to do it, but I just didn't believe it. But today, I ride well. Now, what I'm trying to tell you about necessity being the mother of invention is, the moment we embrace this option of voting, you're going to jumpstart other complementary options. If we embrace the option of going E on our voting, the police will also have to jumpstart their own commensurate security measures that can actually accommodate what we want to do. So it's going to be progress across board.
Professor, you've heard the gentleman in the studio. Do you fault their argument?
I agree. We are on the same side with the captain. We are on the same side with the captain. I agree with him that this has to be a piecemeal, gradualist, process. So
that's not what he's saying. He's saying jumpstart the process. That's what he's talking about.
No, I thought the captain was saying that he agrees that we have to be more careful. We don't have to run without crawling.
Yeah.
But hold on there, Mr. Matt, you have a different argument. You see, J.F. Kennedy is on record to have been the mastermind behind the space exploration in the U.S. It was never done before. The spirit of Apollo was not there yesterday. It was somebody who sat down somewhere, conceived that this thing could be possible. He didn't know how it was going to happen. He gave a time frame. Let me tell you, when an aircraft takes off, a lot of forces, gravitational forces and so on, you understand? The plane, the pilot and everybody will begin to, touch button and all that until they're able to escape that pool. When it gets to cruising level, all the forces in the universe, spiritual, psychological, and they help to hold the plane. You understand what I mean? So when you decide that this thing is possible, all the forces will act in concert.
Timeline is
that by 2019, we should be full-blown electronic voting. If we want to move forward.
Let me put it this way.
We need to see it as
give the task. The people who are going to do it are there in this country.
Have we seen it as a project that needs to be followed?
That is the issue.
We must see it as a project. Thank you for using the word project. A project itself is actually a deliverable you intend to put on ground, to time, to budget, to specification. So if we see it as a project, then we are all going to meet in the middle. Myself, the learned gentleman, and Professor Naji. Professor Oshita. Being a project, it means all the processes for managing a project come to play.
Yes.
But I want to tell you something. E-voting is not a destination, it's a journey. Okay, it's not a destination. If people begin to see it as a destination, then you get out of line. It's a journey, and it's one journey we must make. As he said earlier, the train has already left the station. Now, as the train progresses, each kilometer of the journey is opportunity to learn hands-on, rather than stop the train first and want to learn. Hands-on learning.
Just a moment, let me quickly get, because we'll soon be going on break again. Professor, do you think, because yes, Captain might be on your train in terms of taking things gradually, but we set a time frame of 4 years, which also happens to be what Barrister Naji is saying. Do you think that we can do this in 4 years?
Well, I think that there are so many more things that have to be in place. And you have alluded to the issue of infrastructure, the backbone, that is necessary, that will enable all the institutions and agencies that should contribute to this process, to participate at the same level. If we are not able to guarantee that, then of course the e-voting we can say 2019, but we might not achieve it. What is the sense in saying 2019, putting a date, and then we do not make that date? My take is that we should first of all be satisfied that the level where we are, we have perfected things. Then those are the building blocks upon which e-voting can be conceptualized and implemented or operationalized in Nigeria. So I don't want to put a timeline and then have myself, looking down, when we are not able to meet it. I think we need to put a number of things in place. Our communication system, it need to be, how RTS, the communication system, all the service providers in this country, can be in terms of what we get. How often do you succeed in making very successful calls, without shouting, So I think we must put some things in place.
Now. Well, let's see how, when we come back, we'll wrap this up before we go to our news studios. A very quick one here, if you just joined us, you're watching Nigeria 2015, the governorship elections in 29 states of the Federation, and of course, assembly elections in all the states except the FCT. We'll return shortly. Stay with us.